So, Peter Walmsley, welcome to The Science of Us.
Thank you very much, Tim. Great to be here and looking forward to your questions.
No, likewise. Thank you for joining us. And can I start with maybe asking, who is Peter Walmsley?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been trying to ask that question for many years, actually. So I'm Peter Walmsley. I'm the Chief People Officer for GSN Games. I'm based in Boston, but as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from Boston. I'm originally from London and have lived in the US for around about 7 years with my wife and 3 dogs. We've actually traveled a long way to get here. We originally lived in London for many years, and then I got relocated to Paris with Fidelity, then to Madrid with Fidelity, Geneva with Electronic Arts, then San Francisco with Electronic Arts, and now Boston with GSN. So we've had a great run of going through those lovely cities. And I would say, really, what am I about? I've been involved in HR for all my career. And the thing I love about it is just helping people, helping organizations lead through change. And that's really how I see my role, in whatever shape or form that is for a company. Helping them through that process of change is what gets me out of bed in the morning, I would say.
That's awesome. And I suppose skill set that is very much required right now as we go through sort of an unprecedented change, which we can come back to at the end, because I think obviously a lot of people talk about it probably way too much at the moment. But if we can get into a question looking at your background, so effectively now you're at GSN Games. What intrigued you to enter the world of gaming? And I guess you've sort of talked about a little bit about the background of the previous roles,
Yeah.
but what intrigued you to get into the world of gaming to start with?
You know, being honest, I was based in Madrid working for Fidelity and looking for a new role. At that time, I didn't really know much about the games business. Electronic Arts had contacted me for a role. They wanted me to be based in Switzerland, have a regional role from an HR perspective. And I guess what intrigued me really was the people. And there's the connectivity there. The role was the role, and the industry. I thought, well, I've worked in many, and with the skill set I've got, I think I was able to convince everyone that I could apply those skills to Electronic Arts. So it wasn't so much gaming as more the role, but obviously as I got into EA, started to understand more about the games industry, because I genuinely knew very little about it prior to going in. So it was probably a slight risk, but a good risk, I would say, looking back.
So yeah, that's a great thing that you've obviously then enjoyed on doing it. And what was, I guess if you look at, you've mentioned Fidelity and then some of the other companies that you were with, I guess coming to the games industry, how did that really, if you could sum it up, how did it differ from where you'd worked before?
Oh, I mean, if you think about, I've worked for American Express and regional global roles, worked for Fidelity and a number of their different operating companies. And both those environments, very buttoned up, very structured, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and you know where you're at, and you have some freedom of movement about how to go about your role. Joining it Electronic Arts was like going back into the Wild West. I have to be honest with you. It was driven by personality at the time, a lot of ego. It was the entertainment business, and people were as good as their game, the game that they'd just built. And where there were 100 processes, there were probably around 1,000 to 1,000,000 exceptions. So the whole thing was
Wow.
run on exceptions. And I'll be honest with you, the first few months, I thought, what have I done? Why have I done this? Why have I left that structured environment to this sort of chaotic, people-driven, ego-driven world? But I had to sort of give myself a good shaking up one day and said, I just need to get over myself, and
Yeah.
forget everything I know, and just start again with a blank sheet of paper and think, okay, it's about relationships. Do what you do well. Go and talk to people, understand their perspective. And here you had people who are creative, push the boundaries, innovative, and had a completely different mindset for how they approach their work compared to some of the structured environments that I worked in. So trying to navigate a path through a completely different environment, actually I came to really enjoy it and really love it, actually. But I'd be very honest to say I had to get over myself based on my history and my past of the organizations that I work for.
Fair enough. That's fascinating. And why do you think, and I guess from your observations being there, why do people get into gaming in the first place? Probably both from a employee standpoint of why people join those companies, but also from what you've observed, why there's so many gamers out there. Why do people get into the first place?
Yeah, well, I think why do people want to get it? But based on what I could see, that if you think about it, if you have a passion in life, how often do we ever get the chance to follow through on that passion, whether it's in our working life or our private life? You tend to find that people follow their passions a lot more in their private life. But here, I think within games, you've got an opportunity to really follow a passion. And many people join the games business because of that. They're working on their passion and they get paid for it. And they love the environment on that. And I also think that once you're in the games business, it's constantly evolving. When I look back at Electronic Arts back in 2010, a lot of it was around packaged goods distributed through retail. And you look at the digital transformation over the last few years, completely changed. And the whole way games are built and constructed these days has changed. So it's a very dynamic, really evolving business. And you get a lot of people who are really excited about being at the vanguard, if you like, of that change. I also tend to find that you think that there are plenty of people in the games business who are there simply to make the best game ever. And one of the challenges I think in any games business is that sort of dirty word of, are they commercially viable versus actually, it's the best game in the world. And sometimes it's that conflict between the two that impacts organizations. And I just think the fun, creativity, innovation, those are all great reasons why people join. And my father was horrified, actually, when I joined the games business, because I told him that I no longer wore a suit to work and I was casual. He said, I just cannot believe a son of mine would go to work and wear jeans. But it's interesting, the whole environment, the whole context is completely different. And it's one that appeals to people as well.
And that's fascinating from that employee standpoint. Obviously, gaming itself has been so transformational in terms of society when you look more broadly. One question I would have is that many of the games out there you see right now, Fortnite, a lot of these other ones, they attract millions and millions of users. They've got their rivals as well, PlayerUnknown, etc. The list sort of goes on. Aside from the gaming experience that these people have, is there something else that you think attracts people to play all these games and to spend hours and hours online?
Well, when you look at the world that we live in these days, I think there are a number of reasons. I think things that come to mind for me, often it's an escape for people. Escape from their day-to-day reality, and they, if they have a degree of competence at playing the game, it gives them a chance to shine at something that they might not previously have shone at. Sorry, get my words right. I think there's the whole social connectivity as well. People are having that social element to it. They love it. The fact that they can come home or wherever, join their friends and play a game. But you also see other games when you think back to Farmville and things like that, is the ability to create something, and it's unique, and you got a sense of achievement as you've built something as well. So I think that all those are a lot of the reasons why people will play games as well. And it's another form of entertainment. I think the digitalization of games has made it much easier for people to play in their front rooms, play for hours, and to be connected in a way that they previously weren't.
And I think I could probably echo that as well. I mean, I'm a little bit of a gamer. I wouldn't say I sort of spend a lot of time doing it, but from my friend and I think that it's one of those things that I do genuinely enjoy, because it's not just the playing together. It's actually that we're we're on the headset, we're talking to each other. It's a very social event as well, which is interesting to see sort of where we are right now, that I think there's obviously so many applications for that as well. So I guess, sorry, you go.
No, I was going to say in that it's interesting that if you look at the World Health Organization, literally in the last week, was advocating that people on a global basis play video games, which was contrary to their previous advice, is that they could be in some way damaging to your health if you play them
Totally.
too long. Now, in the current context of us all staying at home, they're saying actually, what better way to have that social connectivity without actually physically being alongside people is to play games. So it's interesting to see the adaptation of circumstance and how that's changed.
It is so many of these things that in this brave new world. Moving to mobile gaming, because that's where you are at the moment. Now, mobile gaming itself has exploded probably ever since the smartphone was released. Yeah. So, how did you find yourself moving from, I guess, electronic arts, which was very broad in terms of all the stuff we've talked about with all the different games, etc. they offer. How did you then find yourself at GSN Games doing something that was still obviously in gaming, but was a little bit different?
Yeah, I think part and parcel of that was a great career opportunity to be the chief people officer for GSN Games, knowing that they had the backing at that time, part backing of Sony and AT&T, and now 100% owned by Sony. It was looking at it and say, look, this is another big player in the industry, but actually it's a niche in terms of social and casual games. And I thought, what better opportunity for me to move into that head of HR, chief people officer role, and help shape an organization that was very profitable, which is relatively rare in the games industry, and actually ensure that it's maintaining and growing. So for me, it ticked all of those boxes of still in gaming, dynamic, well-funded, opportunity to shape and drive change, and to have some fun in a different part of the games business as well.
And what was the difference like between the people? So you sort of said when you joined EA, it was, the sort of the Wild West and having to do that adjustment. What's it been like then from being within the games industry and moving from EA to GSN? How has it differed in terms of the type of people that you now deal with? What's that dynamic like?
Well, what was interesting was that in the 5-6 years I was at EA became a lot more structured, changed its strategy to focus on less games but bigger franchises versus having 60-70 games on its portfolio. So in many ways became a lot more structured, much more coordinated, less variation, if you like. And then joining GSN was like going back to what EA was like, of all things to all people all of the time at that particular moment in time. And what was interesting is then and now there's a lot of people who used to work at EA who are now at GSN, a lot of people who went from EA to Zynga, who then Zynga to GSN. So it's interesting that people have gone through 2 or 3 of the key game companies and brought their experience and knowledge to bear within the mobile world and within GSN. So I would say people-wise, been able to attract some great talent who've had that, like me, have had that experience in multiple games companies along the way. But clearly, one of our great things compared to EA, which clearly, on the console side, long development times. In the mobile business, it's pretty quick to get your game up and running. So the pace of the organization is significantly faster, in my view. And decisions can be made just like that to go and make some tweak or change that will actually then drive the player experience as well as the revenue contribution.
So you mentioned the behavior behind all of this. Why do you think it is that people are so interested in playing games on mobile devices? Why is it we obviously spend so much time? I'm addicted to my mobile phone. My wife tells me I spend way too much time on it, which I admit. Why do you think that people get into then gaming on their phone?
Yeah, this is clearly a confessional because my wife says exactly the same to me. So we'll start a self-help group, I think, as a result. But if you think about it, I think it mobile phone fits into our world. You're sitting on a train, you're sitting on a bus, etc., or you got 10 minutes before a meeting. It's very easy to just pick that phone up, play your game for 10 minutes, and you can pick it up, put it down, leave it, go back to your device, or go back to your iPad, or go back to your PC at any time. And I think what people like is just the bite-sized chunks that enable you to play when you've got the moment to play. Completely different to your example of playing with your friend on a console game where you need a good block of time to actually make it happen. And so I actually see it as either a major form of relaxation or distraction, whether you like it. And for a lot of our players who play our casual games, quite often it might be the last thing they do before they go to bed as a form of relaxation is play on bingo or casino or puzzle games for half an hour before they go to sleep on there. And I just think it's the accessibility that really appeals to people. And I, like you, I've been on trains and I've watched. There's no conversations. Everyone is deeply buried in their phone. They're either playing a game, answering emails, or watching a video. But predominantly it's games.
And I think it's such an important point about the distraction and the wind down, because I think what a lot of people also talk about is this short-termism. As a society, we are very much, we want bite-sized things. We don't want to read the full article. We just want instantaneous gratification. But I think that the other side to that is that the fact is people do need a wind down mechanism. Very regularly when I'll play my other game with my mate online, it is done so that I can actually wind down from the day that was. Because particularly right now, when you are in an environment where you're working, many people are working from home now across the world, you generally will transition. Well, I'm finding that I'm doing this, which can be dangerous, where you go from maybe on the couch just for a quick show, while you eat dinner or whatever it might be, then you're back at your laptop because it's just over there, and you continue to work, and then all of a sudden it's 11:30, and then you just go straight to bed, and there's no transition in between, which can be so dangerous. And I think that what you're saying there, even if it is that ability just to log on straight away and then just to start getting that sense of almost mind relief where it can just...
Yeah, it's escapism. Back to what we were talking about earlier. It's a level of escapism away from the reality that you're trying to deal with, or from the guilt of I should actually be answering my emails, when actually what I am going to do is I'm going to unwind in this way on that. And
totally,
I totally agree with you actually. Yeah.
And what have you observed in the way that people behave between? So we talked about a little bit between sort of mobile and console. Are there any other key things that you've noticed between the difference? Obviously, one is that short-termism, one is the long-term. Is there anything else that's differed between the two that you've noticed yourself that stood out?
I just think you hinted at it yourself, actually. I just think it's around the average play time. If you think about how long you spend on a console game with your mate, detoxing, relaxing, socializing, it's going to be significantly longer than that bite-sized chunk of time that you might have on your mobile. My boss told me about his daughter the other day, who started playing a well-known game at 9 o'clock in the evening and didn't finish till 4 o'clock in the morning, and was cheering when she had finished and woke the whole house up. And I thought, okay, that's a perfect illustration of, they are more time consuming. I think you can get sucked into it, if you're having multiple players and you've got the social element, and time just evaporates. Whereas I think you're far more in control on a mobile phone game, where you're trying to make it work in those 10 minutes you've got, or those 5 minutes there. Whereas I think on the console games at times, you just lose all sense of reality about time and the impact of time.
I totally agree with that. Now moving to, we've alluded to it a little bit throughout the show, and I sort of promised myself I wouldn't spend too much time on it because I know that what people say, but right now we are in the middle of obviously COVID-19. It's forcing people inside. We talked a little bit about before the fact that the WHO has even changed their recommendations to things, but we are obviously spending more time on our devices. From an industry standpoint, I guess you're right at the forefront of being able to witness any changes that you're seeing with behaviour. Is there anything you can talk to us about from what GSN is seeing, what your industry peers are seeing? I guess any key trend lines that we could talk about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're monitoring on a day-by-day basis, and it's clear that as people are spending more time at home, then we have seen the amount of time people are spending on our games and the revenue that comes as a result of that, that has increased. And I think if you looked at the TV business as well, that would be equally so, as people are looking at how do they spend their time. So I think that's one trend, and I think that would probably be consistent across most industries. The other thing that I think is important, that what we're trying to do, and a lot of games companies are doing, is actually build into our games, which we can do very quickly within the social casual games, is a charitable element to it, so that we can quickly raise money and then give that to a charity of the company's choice that's directly linked to helping people. For example, one of the things we've been thinking about is distributing food to people in all the locations where we operate. Well, if we can do that through the game, through raising money through the game, that's something that players want to be involved in, as well as our employees as well.
And you generally see pretty good take up from the players who want to get involved with that?
Definitely, very definitely. Very definitely, and I alluded it to earlier as well. The World Health Organization saying actually this is a good time to be playing a video game. So it's nice to get that sort of endorsement from a global organization to say actually this probably does make sense in this context. So a lot of the language I've seen with other providers is about player time increasing, perhaps revenue increasing, and companies being cushioned from some of the effects you've seen on other industries. And as a result, people thinking about how do we build in opportunities for charitable contributions as a result, but actually playing a part in keeping people socially connected.
That's fantastic. People have talked about the fact that this whole crisis could fundamentally change the way we operate in the future. I think that there's a very real likelihood of that, particularly when it comes to socializing and everything else. Do you see probably an even more positive future for gaming then, in that sense that it's a way to bring people together, and people are probably going to be more like with remote work, where people are saying remote work is most likely going to become something that a lot more companies realize, oh, hey, I can actually do this, and it's actually quite good for us. Do you see any similarities in the gaming industry?
Well, I think so. I think we're all going to learn, as you said, a lot over the last few weeks and the next few weeks and few months. And I think personal view is it's going to take some time before we all feel confident and relaxed about going back to doing things the way that we used to, and there will be adjustments. And I do believe that the whole social connectivity through gaming will be there for quite some time. Now, will it sustain over time as society relaxes or unfolds or goes off in a new direction? I don't know, but I think this is a moment for gaming companies to really think about how they can ensure that they really are player first and really thinking about what's going on within society, and then match the games to the needs of the player. So I definitely see it happening, and I also agree with you that remote working is going to happen more and more. And people are going to look for different ways to decompress after that.
Well, I think that's a brilliant way to wrap up the conversation. I think some very interesting thoughts and considerations for people as we continue to go through this and see what happens on the other side. But Peter Walmsley, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us on The Science of Us. I've very much enjoyed our conversation.
Well, so did I, Tim. Thank you very much. And above all else, stay well and stay safe.
Likewise to you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers now. Bye-bye.